Welcome to Good Source Material. Now, what do we mean by source material? Well, like reference material in the past, but this time it's actually going to be used within our final render. So this could be a picture, a photo, a video, or even another render that you've done. Now, in a bit, we'll grab a photo and check out its settings. Now, this is important for both stills and photos, and I'm going to hammer this point home because it really does save you a lot of time. With your own video, keep a note of the settings as they're often lost. So what device you took it on. In fact, let's get to the essential data that you're going to need. Now, this is a little bit of a white lie. You can get by without this information. However, it will take a lot of your time and toing and froing and trying to get the scene just right. If you've got the data, it can speed up things a lot. So the resolution of the recorded data, the camera sensor size, and the lens focal length. Now, some of these you're going to have to look up for certain devices, and some of them are built into Blender, so we can use a combination of research or just a preset that's straight away available to us. Now, pictures, fortunately, often have this data stored with them, and you can right-click on them, and on a Windows machine you can go to Properties, or on a Mac you can go to Get Info, and if the picture has this information stored with it, then you will actually be able to look at that and record it down, and then we can set up our camera in the scene with the same settings. Now, if it's a render that you've already done, you'll have to use the camera settings that were in that other blend file. Now, things that are nice to have is... Oh, before we move on to that, I do apologise. Pictures do have this data stored with them, but videos do not. So it is a great idea that you note down what device the video was recorded with, if that's possible. Now, nice to have, well, measurements of the area you're working in. That's very useful for working out distances and placing things at a certain scale within your scene. Position of any lighting. Now, if it's an outdoor scene in the daytime, there's usually one prominent light, that is the sun in the sky, that will be the source of most of your lighting. However, if it's an indoor scene, you may have several lights scattered about contributing to your scene. If you take a note of where those are and perhaps the intensity of them, or just say they're all the same, then at least you've got a good standing to start using that photo or video. Now, in this particular instance, we're going to use a photo, so the lighting is probably just going to be the sun. Keep things simple, remember that. Now, a couple of things to look out for. Light direction and looking for shadows. Now, they kind of go hand in hand, and shadows can be both a blessing and a curse. So you will want to make sure shadows don't cross over where your object will be. If they do, you're going to have to create another object to cast that the real shadow on top of your object, and of course delete the other one. And this entails more and more work, and we want to avoid getting too nitty-gritty at this point. Certainly there will be instances, if you ever go into this fully, where you will have to edit the actual picture or video and cut things out and mask things off, but we're not going to go quite that deeper dive in this section. Reflections are very similar to shadows. They can give away the true nature of a scene. And so we do have to be careful if there are reflections. Instances like that could be a glass building or a mirror. That's a good reflective surface. Cars tend to be reflective. They're going to reflect the area around them. Things that you might not focus on, like a puddle on the ground. Those can reflect and give away the fact that, hang on a minute, there should be a reflection of the object in there as well. Again, if we can avoid those type of things, we can get on really well and quickly. That's the important thing. Now, you will also have to watch out for anything in the foreground. Those foreground objects can cause you a bit of a nightmare. They're in front of your object, and therefore you've got to work around them. So at the moment, I would avoid foreground objects where possible. So finally, if you were creating your own source material, you can have a bit more control over how it's looking. So with photos, take measurements of the scene, that's very important, as well as the camera settings that you currently have. So remember what focal length you've switched your camera to. If it's a fixed length camera, you may have to research. So if you've taken a video or photo with your iPhone or Android device, then you'll want to look up the specs of the camera. With videos, you can lay down markers, especially if your CGI is going to cover the area in question, and that can help massively. High contrast is key. because that helps with camera tracking, and we'll see that later on. Now, you will want to avoid sharp and jerky movements. It makes tracking the camera really, really difficult and time consuming. Now remember, and this is the last time I'm going to say this so many times, to store your camera and lens settings. Make sure you know what they are. It's going to help you a lot. Okay, so now we've got the groundwork sorted for what source material is ideal to be working with, it's time for a challenge, and I'd like you guys to go find a photo. Now find yourself a suitable photo to work with. Think about your project, what you're working on, and what you are trying to achieve. Remember, please keep things simple, especially if this is your first time doing any visual effects. Now, I'll personally be finding a runway because I'm doing a CGI plane and I'm going to place that on the runway. Now, make sure your image has camera details. Now, if you've gone off and taken a photo, great, you're going to have all the details because you've actually taken the photo. But if you haven't and you're sourcing a photo from online, make sure that it does have those camera details embedded in it. Go ahead, pause the video, and go find a suitable photo. Okay guys, welcome back. Let's go see what I found and make sure it's suitable. Okay, so after searching the web for a bit, I have found a picture I really like. We can see where the light source is. It's the sun and it's just dipping below the mountain top there, just glaring out. And that's going to give us some lovely warm colours as well. It's going to produce long shadows when it's so low on the horizon. And now I don't have to attribute this, but I will since I'm on the site. But before I go any further, of course, let's just make sure that this particular photo is suitable, because I don't know any of the settings. It might just be an image. Okay, so clicking download has just opened it up for me. So it's a nice high-res image. That's very useful. Look at that, lots of detail. Okay, so I'm going to right-click and save the image in my downloads for the moment and open it up. Now you can right-click on the download itself and go to properties, or indeed right-click and go to get info. I believe I can get info from preview on a Mac as well. So we can see straight away, I'm going to go to the File tab first of all. We've got the number of pixels it is. That's also easy to look up. So that's a great start. I'm going to look under the EXIF data. Now this should give us, here we go, focal length. So we've got that. We need to know what camera it was taken on. I'm guessing it's taken on a camera. Yep, we've got the lens model here. Now that can be very useful if you're trying to exactly mimic a real life lens, because we could go and get the data for that lens if it's got any particular distortion. But do we have the camera type? So let's go along here. Here we go, a Canon EOS 1100D. I don't know the sensor size for that, so I'm going to search for Canon EOS 1100D. I'm just going to literally go sensor size. Now I'm a bit of a photographer. I'm going to assume it's their ASP, this one here, of that size. So its width here is going to be 22.2. So I've written down all of these bits of information, making sure that I can go back to them if I need to. It's quite an affordable camera. Excellent. I really like this photo. I'm looking forward to working with it. How did you guys get on? Are you going to use the photo that I've got here? Are you going to follow along with a plane? You could put a car on there if you wanted to as well. Cars and runways kind of go together. If you picked a different scene, I'd love to see what projects you're going to work on. Remember to share that in the discussions, and I will see you guys in the next lecture.